Hey guys, and welcome to Beasts and Beyond. I am your host, Asherz. I'm joined this week by co-host Jimothy Strange. Jimothy, how are ya?
I am doing great, Asherz. How are you?
Oh, super excited to be here. This is different. It's different because I don't have to tell you about my weekend. I don't know. I mean, I guess I could, but I think people already heard it this week if they're listening to the regular Wednesday show, and they should be. So,
Absolutely, they
um,
should.
this is a new format. Since you are the first, you get to be the lucky one to do the first shows with me here on this one and the other one. So very exciting stuff.
Oh yeah, I'm excited to be the guinea pig for sure.
Yes, absolutely. So people that are here already know what the title of the episode is, so it's no surprise. We are here to talk about specifically the Kentcuky Goblins, more specifically the Kelly-Hopkinsville encounter. What's your history with this story?
This is one of my favorite paranormal stories. Any events of high strangeness, this usually comes to mind. You know, when people ask me what's my favorite one, this one's up there. I've got a tattoo of the drawing of the Kentcuky Goblins. Like this is one of my favorite stories. It's always been up there. I've heard a lot of interviews in recent years with Geraldine Sutton Stith, you know, one of the descendants there. I don't think she was born maybe at the time that this happened, but you know, she was family with all of those folks there. So I've heard a lot of interviews with her, and she's still, you know, great spirits about everything as well. So it's always been one of my favorite, most fascinating topics to dive into.
Yeah, I agree. It's a fun one. I have talked about it myself on the Wednesday show. I talked about it on other shows pretty extensively. I somehow, whenever I give a lecture, it somehow always seems to come up, and I don't know why. But hey, you know what? Any chance that I have to talk about the goblins, I'm here for it.
Absolutely.
So I noticed you use the term actively use the term Kentcuky Goblins. Is that your go-to? Because they're called different things, right? But you like that term for them.
That's what I've kind of always thought of them as, is just they're the Kentcuky Goblins, that or the Hopkinsville Goblins. They're kind of interchangeable with me, but Kentcuky Goblins is kind of just my catch-all term for it.
And that's okay. I mean, like I said, different people call it different things. So,
I was on my show notes here where I was writing this up. It's titled Hopgobs. So
Hopgobs, nice. That's really cool. That sounds like a really cool, like a punk band name.
That or an IPA.
There probably is a Hopgobs IPA out there.
Probably.
I wouldn't be surprised. Well, let's just go ahead and we will, kind of get into the meat and potatoes of the Kelly-Hopkinsville encounter. This happened on the night of August 21st in 1955.
Yes, indeed.
There's a lot of discrepancy about a particular detail about the story that has bothered me for many years. I can't figure out who all was there.
Yeah, that's kind of a thing. Like you've got a story of like 25 people,
right,
give or take sometimes, and it is kind of a jumbled mess. But hey, what they say, when the truth becomes legend, print the legend. So
and that the press sure did do that when this came out. There are other details that we can kind of go back and we can kind of fact check on, but like who all was at the house that day for sure, it's kind of a mystery. But to my knowledge, I'm going to try to run down this list. So at a farmstead there, right on the line of it's the Kelly-Hopkinsville Goblins, because it happened right on this line between Kelly and Hopkinsville, Kentucky.
Yeah.
So on a farmhouse there, we're going to say the farmhouse was owned by Glennie Langford. Okay, this is the matriarch of a family. I believe all these people that I'm going to name are her children, and I believe that they were all in attendance, and they ranged from age 7 all the way up to adults. So I'm going to go down that list. We've got Lonnie. We've got Charlton, Charlton, Charlton. We've got Mary. We've got Lucky, and we've got JC. Then we have Lucky and JC's wives, Vera and Eileen, I believe. Eileen's brother, OP, and their neighbors, Billy Ray Taylor and June Taylor.
With it being Kentucky, you've got to have an Opie and a Billy Ray. That's how it is. I grew up right next to one on either side of me, so that's how it is.
Lucky is optional.
Yeah.
But you gotta have an Opie and a Billy Ray. So all these people they're kind of having a get together. Several of the adults in the mix are actually carnies. They're carnival workers. And they were visiting, Glennie, Mama Glenn, on their travels. And so other people had also come. That's why Billy Ray was there, I guess. He was visiting his buddy Lucky. Anyway, Billy Ray is important because he goes outside and he walks off to the well there on the property. And, as he's approaching the well, he looks up in the sky and he sees something very strange. He ends up seeing a bright colored light of some sort. But what's interesting about the light was that he mentioned that it had an exhaust coming off of it that happened to be like different. He said different colors of the rainbow. It's very colorful exhaust coming off of a bright light. And he goes in the house and he tells everybody about it. And, they all just think, he's a jokester. He's a carny. Yeah. He's funny. It's not serious.
He's telling tales.
And then the family dog, maybe dogs, again, we don't know who all was there, started acting very strange. And this is where the story takes an even weirder turn. So before I get into that, I'm going to stop there. Do you have any opinions about what Billy Ray had seen?
See, it's one of those things. It's like, what could he have seen at that time? Nowadays, people see stuff all the time, and it's going to be satellites, or even still when you've got like your SpaceX launches, and people will see the rockets with the giant plumes coming off of it. And it's still just a rocket, but if you don't know what you're looking at, it looks crazy. But this is 1955. You're not going to be seeing all that. That you're not going to have. When did the first satellite go up? It would have been around that time, but I don't think it was necessarily then. And even then, they wouldn't be. Actually, Sputnik didn't even go up until 1957, so you wouldn't be seeing that. So to see something in the sky like that, and claiming that it's got exhaust on it, maybe it's a fireball. Could be a fireball in the sky. Like, that's gonna have a little bit of a tail and a little bit of a streak, and it's gonna be a colorful thing that you can see, especially at 7 p.m. In that twilight kind of time of day. It's gonna show up if you've got a bright fireball streaking across the sky. So, the skeptical side of me says maybe that's what he saw. Maybe it was just a meteor coming through. Like, that's a possibility that you can't rule out. So.
Is that allegedly when this happened, was 7 p.m.?
It was somewhere around 7 p.m., yeah. That was when Billy Ray had seen his.
Because let me tell you, 7 p.m. in August in Kentucky, it's not twilight. It's bright as fuck outside still.
Yeah, I guess this is August, so it's August 21st, so that's... Okay, yeah, so then that changes it a little bit. It's still going to be pretty bright, yeah, because being here in Kentucky, the sun doesn't go down until 9 or 9:30 during the summertime. So he's still going to have plenty of sunshine in the sky.
It's daylight. I think that's interesting. So some people do mention that at the time there was a meteor shower going on, and potentially what Billy Ray had seen was a meteor. And meteors are interesting. You ever seen one before, like in person?
Plenty of them. Yeah,
they're insane. They do give off some really weird colors. We had one incident here, I think it was in 2020 or maybe it was 2021, where we had one that had a green tail, and they will have these multicolored tails, and those tails will kind of, so like if you have a green tail, to kind of oscillate between like green and light green and kind of yellowish. You'll have the red ones that are kind of red and orange and yellow, which could definitely give off that colors of the rainbow look.
And it would definitely look like an exhaust from the tail coming off of it for sure.
Right. So, I mean, a meteor would look very strange to somebody like Billy Ray Taylor, who I'm sure doesn't study science. And, you know, not to knock on these people. I will say that. I will stop that. I'll stop that right here. All the jokes about all the hillbillies and, drinking their moonshine and this, that, and the other. I think that they were all very sober when this happened. And I think that that is something, I think that even if they weren't and they're just drinking, you don't hallucinate things when you drink. It doesn't happen
No.
that way.
And the thing, Glennie was a good old-fashioned Christian woman, and she did not allow them to drink at her house.
No, she wasn't having it. And
No.
if you know anything about a Southern mama, she ain't having it. That's she will make you sleep outside if she smells alcohol in your breath. So, yes. So anyway, back to the story. He goes inside, and like I said, we got to the point he's telling everybody about it. The kids are kind of freaking out. The adults are like, "Stop scaring them kids!" And then the dogs start freaking out. And when they kind of went to go investigate what the dogs were freaking out about, well, this is when they encountered their first little green man. Well, he wasn't green. But let's dispel that rumor right now. It wasn't green. These creatures, whatever they were, for lack of a better term, the goblins, were anywhere from about 2 feet to 4 feet. The official police report says 3.5 feet. So, like I said, anywhere between 2 feet and 4 feet. They probably all weren't the same exact height. Okay.
It's just like people.
Right. They looked very odd. They actually gave off a metallic shimmer to them, and they were gray in color. They looked very humanoid, so they had feet and hands. As a matter of fact, they described the hands as being very claw-like. And the original reports I don't think really disclosed this much, but later on came out that they had like weird maybe ears, or maybe they were wearing some type of headgear or something, or headphones on their ears that protruded from the sides of the head. And they weren't happy about this. They weren't very excited about these intruders on their property. And so between Lucky and Billy Ray, these are our main characters in the story, they tried to shoot at these things.
Well, yeah, it's the mid-50s. You're in very rural Kentucky. That's the first thing you're going to do. You're going to shoot first and ask questions later.
Exactly. And they tried to shoot at them, and they believe they hit them. And they said that when they hit them, the bullets, it didn't really affect them any, and it made like a weird, like dropping a screw in a bucket type of noise.
Yeah, like in a metal bucket. Yep,
like a ping. And so we'll pause there and kind of recollect. What do you think about the appearance?
I think from the description of it, I love it. It's fantastical. It kind of sounds like you can't tell whether that's their skin or if that's, a uniform outfit or something like that on them. But then it is funny too, because if you've seen a picture of like the great horned owls, I saw one online that they were like lined up right next to each other. And when you set the sketch of what the goblin supposedly looked like right next to an actual great horned owl, it's like, okay, yeah, I could see how somebody not knowing what that is could mistake those. And, I'm here in Kentucky. I've never once seen a wild owl, so I don't know. Maybe they're more prevalent over there in Hopkinsville, in the western part of the state, more than where I'm at. I've never seen a single wild owl, and I gotta say, I might be, if it was on the ground and like walking toward me, maybe I would be a little scared of it if I didn't know what I was looking at, especially at that time. At that time, there's all kinds of fantastical reports of, everything going on. So it's kind of like, yeah, I can sort of believe anything at that point, that even if it was just an owl, I'm going to shoot at it and we'll see what happens after that. But no, it's weird. I got the gun. All right, let's shoot at it. We'll pick it up later.
Yeah, owls aren't very sociable creatures. It's like a squirrel, right? You see damn squirrels everywhere. You know. Owls usually you'll hear them, but you don't see them a lot. And it's kind of a rare occurrence. It's not completely unheard of to see them. But
I have heard them, but yeah, never seen them.
right, you usually don't see them. And so to think that okay, so hold on a sec, let's back up. Listeners, why are we bringing up owls? That's because that's one of the theories, is that this family could have seen a couple of great horned owls and they mistook it for something else. Which they do have, that feature of having the something protruding from the sides of the heads. They could also potentially have clawed hands because they have clawed hands. Well, they have feet,
Yeah.
but still. There are some similarities to you can definitely draw the similarities between the great horned owl and the goblins. And we'll kind of go over theories a little bit later on in the show and kind of why what we think personally and why we think what we think. The appearance to me is very interesting because it resembles very much a creature that happened a couple years earlier, 1952, the Flatwoods Monster. And what I mean by that is that the Flatwoods Monster, even though it's much larger and, there are things that are different, it also had that weird metal body.
Yes.
So this isn't something that's completely unheard of. Now, did the Sutton family, for lack of a better term, because again, who the hell all was there? We don't know. But did the Sutton family hear of the Flatwoods Monster story and make that bit up? Probably not, I'm going to say. You're talking the 1950s again, the news of this stuff, even though you did have newspaper and you did have things make headlines and things like that, you didn't have the information that we have now, and
especially if you're working the carny circuit and you're hearing these stories from, other people traveling around and such like that, it's going to be a game of strange telephone for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, did they pick up on that detail? I'm not sure. That's not, the metal bodies thing is a detail that gets left out of a lot of these stories where it is involved, which is strange. It's just a detail people overlook, and I don't know why. I think it's very important. So
yeah,
that's my take on it. I think they look neat. Obviously, if you've seen drawings of them, a lot of people make them look more humanoid. They look a lot like the oh my god, the one Pokemon is based off of them, and I can't think of the name of the Pokemon. Thank you, Sableye.
Yeah, that's it.
That's what they look like. It was a good depiction, except for the diamond in the chest and the purple fur butt.
Yeah.
The shape roughly, that is kind of what we've grown to know and love. But the term little green men came from this incident. And the part about them being green is strange and doesn't really, it just kind of got added onto the media later on down the line.
Yeah. And, as the media is wont to do.
Right. They love to exaggerate. And that's also probably why we have no idea who all was there. But
it doesn't help.
So they start shooting at this one creature. It doesn't react. They go back into the house and they're like, well, maybe it'll just go away. And it didn't go away.
It did not.
It
Spoiler
actually,
alert.
it didn't go away. It brought friends with it. And one goblin turned into probably 3 or 4. So another media misconception was that there was like 15 to 25 of them. Well, guys, they weren't out there counting how many there were, first of all. So there could have just been 2, at minimum, there was at least 2. I know that much, but they said that it was maybe 3 or 4, during the initial report. And these things were, trying to get in the house. They were, walking along the roof, trying to get in the top. They were peeking in the windows, trying to get in that way. At one point, they had checked to go see if they were gone. And I believe it was Lucky that walked out the front door, and one of them had reached down, was on the awning there above the porch, and had reached down and tried to grab him.
That's one of my favorite parts of that whole story, is that it's kind of like that horror movie, like did we get them all? And then like the web talon reaches down from the porch above.
Right. So I gotta say, if these were owls, that's fucking hilarious. Because I do believe that happened. I believe that something grabbed him.
Absolutely.
At minimum. Whatever it was, something reached down and grabbed them. So they were like, oh man, fuck this shit. We gotta leave. And man, this must be my family friendly show. I gotta pull it back. But so they said, fuck this shit, and we gotta leave. And they managed to get all 50 people in one car and drive down to the police station.
Well, they were carnies, so they just borrowed one of the clown cars, obviously.
Right. They just all piled in the clown car and drove down. But when they got to the police station, I mean, we're talking small town Kentucky. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody's familiar with this family. These are men who are carnies. Carnies are, let me tell you guys, I was married to a carny. These dudes are hard. Okay. They are hard. They walk into the police station and they are very freaked out, clearly. And they're like, oh, what's going on? And they're like, oh, we've been fighting them for like 4 hours, and they're like, who's them? What is happening? What are you talking about? And at that point, they tried to kind of relay the story to the officers, but they were excited.
Yes, that's a word for it.
Yeah. They were very, everybody's all over the place. When you're one guy trying to take a report from 50 people, it's difficult to piece together what's being talked about. But the police officers kind of mistook this as they were having some type of altercation with like maybe a neighbor or something, or like other locals. And they were concerned that they were having a shootout with somebody else. And so they went ahead and went down to the property to investigate. And they didn't find anything. So
yeah. Until they searched till like almost like 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they were out there for a while. Yeah.
Yeah. And didn't find anything. So, they just chalked it up to meh. I don't know what to tell you guys. At that point, they'd kind of gotten the story a little more clear about these weird goblin creatures. And once the police officers left, and the family kind of felt a little bit better about, they didn't find anything, right? They're like, it's fine. Let's just go to bed. The creatures come back again.
They return.
And I don't really know what the ending to that is. I mean, they just hung out in the house until they left?
I think they just kind of hunkered down and held out, because one of the stories that I had read was that they didn't even go to the police department the first time until they were out of ammunition. That was when they decided to make a break for it that first time, when they headed down then. So it's one of those things where it depends on the variation you're reading on it, that they were visited again. Some of them just said it ended after. So it's which version of the legend do you find there with it? Yeah. But it's in the one I have seen it where they have come back, but they just kind of had to hide inside the house until morning came, and then they went back.
Yeah. Yeah, the aftermath of it is really sketchy and really weird. So, allegedly, the neighbors had come forward and said that the whole family packed up and fucking left after they came back again. However, there's another variation of events that says that they actually did not leave, that they stayed at the house, and once the story started breaking in the media that this has happened, they had been selling tickets for people to come hang out at the house. And so it was like $1 just to come see the house. It was like $3 if you wanted to take a picture. And then people were starting to rip off pieces of like the foundation and stuff and take it with them. And so at that point, that's when they had enough, and they actually moved out of the property and was like, fuck this. We don't want the spectacle, and left. So it's hard to decipher which one's accurate, because I'll be honest with you guys, that sounds like carny behavior right there.
Yeah, it does not sound out of character for at least the profession anyway, not speaking to them as people, but certainly for the profession. Yeah, I can see that. Like step one, come all, grab a piece of the wall, take it with you right here. Only $1. Yeah, I could see that.
What do you think about I mean, have you heard that part of the story before?
I have not heard that version of it. Everything that I had always heard on it was that they were not necessarily embarrassed or ashamed, but they kind of just didn't want to talk about it anymore. Like that all the people were like, "Oh, so you saw the little green men, huh?" And they were like, "Yeah, I'm not talking about it anymore. I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to deal with the attention and everything that comes from it."
Yeah.
So that was what I have always read and heard. I had not heard the setting up the sideshow aspect of it.
Yeah, and of course that could just be a rumor. I don't know. It could be accurate. Maybe they did try to set up the sideshow aspect, and then some of them were like, "Well, we don't want to do this," and the other. I mean, maybe the Carney boys were like, "Yes, let's do it," and Grant,
got out of hand.
Mama Glenn was like, "Hell no," who knows? Again, there's multiple people involved, so I don't know.
Yeah.
They might not have all been on the same page. Billy Ray strikes me as a guy that could be like, look, we can make some money off of this.
Exactly.
So there was also a rumor that there was allegedly a glowing type of substance on the fence around the property.
Yes.
Potentially from where they had shot the creatures. But no samples were ever taken or anything like that for us to verify what that might have been. Some people speculate that it could have been there, but it was some type of fungus that glows naturally.
Foxfire, yes. That they could just be on the rotted wood of the fence there, that was something that occurred naturally and they were seeing it then, but it wasn't necessarily, like residue or blood or anything that had happened from shooting at the invaders.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, at least there didn't seem to be any type of blood trail or anything like that. Again, no physical evidence was collected, so I don't know.
Yep.
There were also reports that the military had showed up, and this is kind of true and kind of not true. So when the police went down to go investigate the situation, what was going on, they did take a couple of Army officials with them, and that is just likely due to the fact that you've got to remember when the officers initially got on scene there, they were expecting a bloodbath between humans.
Yeah.
So they very well could have brought a couple of Army bros with them, and they're like, "Hey, can you help us, crowd control this situation?"
Better safe than sorry.
Right. I don't think that it was because I think the officers clearly did not think that there were aliens initially. I think that, again, very much they thought that this was just people feuding. So I don't think that they would have contacted the military going, "Hey, we got aliens here,"
Yeah.
or whatever. But that's my personal opinion on that bit. I think it's interesting. And then
I think with them asking the soldiers to come, then it wouldn't be related. But had the soldiers just shown up after, that's when the red flags start to get sent up. Then yes,
it would have been weird. And like the story of Injured Cold, when Woodrow Derenberger had his big press conference, an official from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base did go and interview him, and that was weird. It was like, okay, that's strange, sort of. I guess we were just getting off the tail end of Project Blue Book. Allegedly, this case is in Project Blue Book. I have a hard time believing that. I've read it, and I feel like I would have remembered and been like, yes, that's one of the Blue Book cases, because I love this so much, right? I would have been like, hell yeah, brother, it's in Project Blue Book. And I don't think it is. So I think that's another, rumor that's just kind of floating out there, which is weird because you could read, you all could go read Project Blue Book if you want to, and you should. It gets very boring at times. It's not a very good story, but it's
well, here's the thing too that I wonder on it, that I don't think I've heard any of it, but it also kind of makes me wonder if there were any Men in Black appearances that sort of followed around this one.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure.
I haven't heard of any about this in particular, but you're right. After this event happened, whether or not they sold the tickets to the house or whatever, really after this event happened, the family just disappeared pretty much. I mean, not necessarily they didn't go missing 411. They just They just weren't in the public view about it.
Yeah, they just stayed on the down low.
Right. They just stuck to themselves, whether they moved or not. I don't know. But I think the only people, the only person, the only reliable source at this point, is, what's her name? The granddaughter. I think she's the granddaughter.
Yeah. Geraldine Sutton Stith.
Yeah. She is, a great resource for this. And again, the only person you could probably rely on to tell the story accurately. And she does, but she only just now kind of started doing it in recent years. Is that right?
Yeah, just within the last couple of years or so. She's been on quite a few things. I've heard a few interviews with her, and she seems like a delight to talk to. I haven't gotten to meet her yet, but yeah, no, she seems just like just a joy to interact with.
Yeah, she did. She spoke at CryptidCon in 2021, and I was there, but I didn't get to hear her speak or talk to her or anything. And CryptidCon is just a whirlwind. It's a lot.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, she does make the circuits. I know that nowadays they had been doing the Kelly Green Man Festival, and I think they did not do it this year. Maybe.
I don't think they've done it for the last couple of years. I personally tried to reach out to them. I think ever since 2021, it's been a couple of years. I've written to the city, I've gone to their town website asking if they're going to have it, and I've not been able to get a response from anyone at all within their local government. Just reaching out to them. I had also heard on a separate live stream from some other high strangeness bros that I follow. I had heard that it used to be a town where they kind of celebrated it out in Kelly in that area, and then they had like little flying saucer things and stuff everywhere, and it was part of their town tourism. But the one guy I was listening to, he was saying that the last time he was there earlier this year, none of that was there. They had gotten rid of it all. It was kind of like they were pushing it away again somehow. So I not having driven through there personally, I can't attest to it, but I can only say that they won't respond to my emails asking if I can come spend money in their town. And and apparently they may or may not have any of their UFO tourism stuff up anymore. So I don't know.
Interesting. I feel like in recent years, Kentucky has had kind of this weird cultural die-off of their weird. And I hate that.
It's weird because it's almost it's kind of getting boiled down to a lot of the places that are still in it for the weird and the strange are very commercial at this point, and it's all definitely for profit for a lot of it, not a thing where it's interested in keeping a lot of the legends alive or anything. It's hey, come give us a whole lot of money and we will tell you the story. So and that is unfortunate, but it does keep at least some of the bigger ones alive, and I'll support them because they are still technically small local businesses. So I'm happy to. I do wish there were more of them out there doing it still.
Because there's no shortage of weird things around the state at all.
Absolutely not.
And so I think that's very interesting. And some of it's not necessarily on purpose. I guess there's 2 paranormal museums in Kentucky, and they're both in Somerset.
That's what I've heard. I was recently back in September at a haunted thing for it was at Waverly Hills Sanatorium, and somebody else was telling me exactly that they had met someone from I know the one guy from the International Paranormal Museum and Research Center. I'm friendly with those guys. I don't know of the other one, but this is the second time that I'm being told about the other one now within a couple months span here.
Yeah, and I know that because I don't know what the difference is between them. Probably the names are slightly different. Or I'm assuming,
Gotta be something, yeah.
But I met one of them at the Mothman Festival, and somebody was introducing us, because we just had never formally met. And they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm great." I was like, "Yeah, how's the museum coming along? I know you guys are shut down because you had a fire." And he's like, "No, that's not us. That's the other guys." And I'm like, "Wait." Just 2 of you. That's when I learned. But yes, one of them had a very bad fire, and they're having a lot of struggle opening back up. And they were very, I mean, he wasn't like, oh yeah, fuck those guys, ha ha ha, they had a fire. Like, he wasn't competitive at all. He's just like, yeah, no, they're really going through it and it's tough. And he seemed very cordial and like on the same team. So
I say at least the one guy that I know from them, that sounds like something he would be. You know, it would be more of a collaboration than a competition.
Right.
So
right.
And that's what it is. I find with all of my favorite people in the paranormal field are those kind of people. Like, you obviously, anything you get into, you're going to find somebody that's more competitive than collaborative, but I don't know, they're good guys, at least at the one that I know. So hopefully it sounds like maybe they both are.
Yeah, I mean, if there's 2 of them in the same town, I mean, God, there's enough weird for everybody. I'll go to both, you know.
Have you ever been to Somerset at all?
I've not.
There's fucking plenty of weird for 4 paranormal museums in that town, but that's another story for another day.
Is it big? Is it a big
no,
city?
Not at all. It's not that big at all.
I mean, I have to make it. I'm not far. We just haven't gone yet. West Virginia's kept me very busy.
And it will surely.
So, and Ohio itself, I mean, my God, I live here, and it's you know, there's enough. I'd never have to leave, really, if I chose not to.
It's same. All I got to do is just walk down the road, and it's like, oh, okay, here's a haunted spot. Let's just sit out here and put on our spirit box and close our eyes.
Here's something new. So back to the goblins. So we'll talk about theories and kind of, you know, what people think. The initial theory, not the initial theory, but one of the biggest ones that I see floating around everywhere is that, again, they're just rednecks that were partying and they got carried away.
Yeah. That's the biggest try to write off, is that they were just a bunch of drunk hillbillies.
Right, they're just drunk hillbillies, and you know, and as we stated, that they were not that type of family. Yes, they were carnies. Yes, they lived in Kentucky, but you know, they weren't typically a group of drunken hillbillies, and people around the local area. You know, they came forward with that. They, you know, gave them that credit. It was like, yeah, no, they're not that type of family. So, and then of course, whether they were drunk or not, the other big popular theory is the great horned owl, that they were just seeing owls and being terrorized by owls all night. And just, you know, they don't act like that. You know, owls don't, that's weird behavior for them.
I don't think our owls, they don't hunt in packs or anything like that, do they? They don't have any sort of like herd mentality. Like, I thought owls were just kind of like lone hunters.
You know, some different species of owls can kind of hang out in pairs, you know, partnered up, but even still, they largely stay away from humans. Like, I can't imagine that there was anything interesting enough inside of that farmhouse that they were peeking in the windows and trying to get in. And I mean, why? For what? You know, what would motivate them to do that?
Especially if someone's shooting at you with, you know, super loud noise and all that. That's going to scare the majority of wildlife creatures away.
Yes, any of them. The dog tried to run away. That didn't happen. I don't think that happened anyway. But yeah, no, I mean, that's they're not going to continue at that point, you know. Just like we have it ingrained in our DNA to be deathly afraid of spiders, they have it ingrained in their DNA to be deathly afraid of humans. And there's a good reason for it. You know, we shoot them. They know that. They know enough to know that. And yeah, if they were shooting at them, then they wouldn't have stuck around any further. But then again, of course, you know, some people say, well, they shot at them. And then, you know, they, at that point in time, were convinced they'd been seeing something else besides the owls, and so they just kind of exaggerated every noise and creak in the house.
I mean, at that point, after, sure, you might, but not leading up to it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you know, that what reached down and grabbed that guy.
Yeah.
I guess an owl could, but it just doesn't. It I don't know. It doesn't check out for me.
No.
So I had kind of made the connection between that and the Flatwoods Monster earlier. And what's interesting about the Flatwoods Monster is that they also said the as it goes that they saw an owl. The witnesses didn't say that, but one of the theories is that they had seen an owl.
And
I thought that was interesting. Is it significant at all? Maybe. It might not be, but I just think that these are two very different creatures that are being, owls are being blamed for causing which don't have like wings or anything. The goblins didn't have wings. The Flatwoods monster didn't have wings. Mothman, also called an owl, he does have wings. Okay, I could kind of see that one.
Yeah, kind of.
But these metallic bodies and one's 2 feet tall and the other is 10 feet tall, and I don't see it. And then again, is it significant? Probably not. But who knows? I find that interesting. I used to kind of work it into some of my theories a little bit back when I was building a timeline, and you'll hear people talk about it all the time. They'll be like, man, the 1960s was a weird time. And, had a lot of high strangeness in it. And it did. Whenever I hear that something happened in specifically 1966, I'm never surprised. I'm like, of course it's 66.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's kind of where the trend started for me. And I was like, well, let me go ahead and start a timeline here. And then you go back and you're like, man, the 1950s, that was a weird time. And then you're like, oh, geez, the 1940s. We had Roswell and Kenneth Arnold and the Men in Black first showed up. And you just kind of keep going back. There is no one particular weird time in history. It's all fucking weird.
It's every bit of it's weird. It's just how much of it was documented.
Yes, and those are the facts. So, is this incident related to any other? I don't know. Another interesting tidbit is and I'm going to talk about the story eventually, specifically on the show. I know people want to hear about it, but it is the proximity of Hopkinsville to the land between the lakes.
Yeah, it's not far.
It's not far at all. I mean, it's like under 30 minutes. It's very close. And the LBL is known for, puppies. And
you could call them that, sure.
They're little puppies out there. But it has a lot of other weird things kind of surrounding that area. So is it a proximity issue? And maybe that's why these things were there to begin with. Because another idea that I've seen posed is, well, what was the motive of these little guys? What were they doing there anyway? Do you have any theories about, if these are aliens, why they would be there?
See, that's the thing with a lot of the alien encounters and things. What are any of them doing there? That's what it's really hard to say. I don't think a lot of times when people have encounters with ETs, whatever you want to call them, that are, terrestrial based, like on the ground, I feel like they're either there to make contact with something or it's an accident, like a complete accident. Like they shouldn't be there and they're just kind of wandering around, kind of like someone getting lost and walking down a main street of some little town. I kind of feel like it could be something like that. Like obviously anything that's going to be able to, to pilot a vehicle that can get it here is going to have some sort of intelligence to it. But part of me feels like anytime you see the things out there, they're either scouting or they are lost. And that's kind of my thoughts on it. Like maybe these things they're lost there because surely they're not, based on the size of them and the way that they are described, I don't think that they would be predators towards humans. So it's not like they were probably looking for a snack in Billy Ray and Lucky. Like I don't think that's what they would be out for. So it was either a scouting thing or they were lost and their spaceship, whatever, their vehicle had crashed. Billy Ray saw it and then they came that way. That's kind of my Occam's razor with it, is that they crashed and they were walking up. If we're assuming that they are ETs.
They were very playful, which was interesting. They seemed interested in interacting, obviously, but they had a very childlike demeanor. And I don't just mean that because they were small. But like, if they're that advanced, technologically speaking, you think that they wouldn't have an issue harming any of these people if they wanted to, if they really wanted to.
Surely, yeah.
It's their guns weren't stopping them. They did seem very like they just wanted to like hang out. I agree. I think that motive is a like a cop out argument that people like to use. Well, why do they do it? I don't fucking know, man. I have no idea.
Next time you see one, bring him here and I'll ask him. But
Right.
until then,
right? Why don't you? All right, let's just ask them. I mean, it's that simple, right? I don't know. Why do they mutilate cattle? I don't know. Why? What's the deal with crop circles? We don't have those answers. We're talking about beings that are, alleged beings, of course, but beings that are so technologically advanced that they can board a craft and come here in some type of, we'd imagine, decently timely manner. We can't even begin to speculate what they're doing here.
I mean, you sort of just imagine like Neil Armstrong bouncing around on the moon. He's going to look kind of like childlike and playful too.
Yeah,
he's going to be peeking in some windows if he sees something right there. Like it's the same kind of deal.
I like to imagine peeping Tom Neil Armstrong.
He's just peeking in like there's some alien mom changing inside of a moon cave there. He's peeking in, he gets caught, and he goes to like run away on his little moon dune buggy. So
and then Buzz Aldrin just trailing right behind him.
Yeah, running behind him. Yeah. Very Looney Tunes like.
Yeah, of course. The music plays and everything, sound effects.
And then nobody on the moon believes these other moon inhabitants. They're like, that didn't happen.
These creatures they had white skin and giant glass heads.
One giant glass eye, and I could see. No, you're drunk off moon juice.
Yep. I agree. I think that, they probably had no idea what they were doing here. Whether or not they saw a craft. So that's another thing. Are they alien? Well, okay. You know what? Actually, let's not go there yet. Jimothy, do you believe this story?
I believe that they believe they saw something. I don't know what they saw, but I absolutely believe that the family saw something that was wild enough for them to shoot up, hundreds of dollars worth of ammunition and shoot windows and holes in their house, because they were carny workers. They're not millionaires.
Right.
They don't have the money to just go out and replenish this. They're hunting, not for sport, but that's the meat that they're going to have for the winter.
Mm-hmm.
That's what their sustenance is. So it wasn't like they had the means to just be like, oh, jolly good, fire another round. It's lucky. Yes. No, it wasn't anything like that. Like so I absolutely believe that they saw something and that they were under siege by something. What that was, great question. That's what we'll be discussing forever. But I absolutely believe that they did see something. I believe something happened there.
I do too. I believe this story. I think it's no. I'll give the Jimothy diplomatic answer. I believe that they saw something. That's the right way. My personal opinion, I want to believe that they were aliens, and that's what happened. My professional opinion is that whatever they actually were, whether they were aliens or whether they were owls or whatever it was they were, they believed that they had an encounter with something anomalous. And for those same reasons, yeah. I mean, it was America at the time, but it wasn't America,
Yeah.
Stuff like bullets were expensive. Stuff like new windows were expensive, and
Yep.
you don't want to piss off Mama Glenn by shooting up holes in her house. She wouldn't have had that.
Nope.
Had there not been something. And so I do believe that there's something to the story. They did not go on to make a bunch of money off of it. Even if they had attempted to do so, they clearly didn't, because the story did drop off and it went into pretty much obscurity. Even now, I see, I've seen people talk about how these kind of older stories are making like a resurgence in pop culture. And I don't really think it's that. I think it's just the availability of the internet makes it easier to spread this information. So of course we're going to see these stories boom over the last 20 years, right? Because we've also seen other things boom as well. But again, they largely, skirted off into history. And I mean, this could be a very easily forgotten about encounter, if it weren't for things like the internet spreading it around. So, none of them ever wrote any books. They never did any documentaries or anything about it. So what would their motive be for lying, if it wasn't to make money?
Yeah. Because they, like you said, there's not notoriety or anything coming from it. They're not writing all these checks, a big wave of checks to the bank. So, we
don't even know who all was there to be like, oh yeah, that Billy Joe, he Billy Ray, whoever,
No, I mean, there could have been a Billy Joe there. Like there's 54 people.
There were 6 different Billies there. But yeah, I don't think that they made it up. Now, I think the more interesting question is not so much whether or not this is real. I think the interesting question is, we're operating under the assumption that they saw something that cannot be explained away by something natural. Okay. Were they alien, or is this something that lives here all the time?
Well,
because the only reason why we think they're aliens is because Billy Ray saw that thing in the sky, but that very easily could have been a meteor.
Yeah, it could be 2 separate events. He saw a natural phenomenon, and then coming up out of the caves, these goblins came after them.
That's a hell of a coincidence, but hey, they do happen.
And it could also be, who's to say that they aren't aliens that landed here in the past and just stayed. So
I like the weather there in Kentucky.
Yeah, it's nice and temperate. Winters aren't too bad. Summers are pretty warm, but if you go down in the caves, it's 52 degrees all year long. So
there's moonshine and guns everywhere. It's great. I don't know. What do you think?
I personally, I don't go for the alien thing myself. I do think that they're a some sort of creature that's endemic to the area. I think they are some sort of possibly a cave dwelling creature. Before I had ever even heard of the story, I've actually seen something like this myself that was near a cave that was back at a quote unquote haunted cemetery, one of our more fun ones here. And I've never seen a ghost out there, but I did see something that I would have considered a goblin. And years later, when I found out about this, and started really digging into high strangeness and seeing the sketches of it, I'm like, that looks like what I saw.
Wow, so really?
I do think that there's something I think it's something here. I think it's something that was already there, and they just kind of came out. Whatever it was, they found them that night. I think that's my personal belief on it. Is it something that was a flesh and blood creature that was here? It could be a little gray man, whatever you want to call it, but I think it's something that's here.
That is interesting. Yeah, one of my friends saw this and saw these, whatever it is, a little creature, a little humanoid type creature, and she saw it in West Virginia. Yeah, no surprise. And this was this isn't like something she disclosed to me, after I am who I am, and she just, she wanted it. This was like well before I did any of this. I mean, and so, the fact that she had that encounter, and then it was like, of course, the way that a lot of these weird stories go in my life, I remember later on in my life. She also, I really, I've talked about this on the Wednesday show before, and I really got to get the details on it. She had like popped off with a story at one point. I don't remember exactly what it was. And she was like, oh, do you remember when, you were in school and like they did this thing? Did you guys ever have that happen? Like when you were in like preschool, and we were all like, I wish I could remember what it was she said, because we were all so fucking baffled. We're like, dude, you got experimented on by the government. Like, that's not normal. And I keep teasing everybody, and I'm like, I really need to find out what this is. And then like, I'll find out, and then I forget about it again. So one of these days I'll remember. But yeah, and then she went on to see one of these things in West Virginia. Again, are those two things related? I don't know, but it's weird. I'll bring it back up another day and still forget about it. But yeah, so I mean, people do see these interesting creatures. Another creature that is a lot more popular, well, I'm saying a lot more popular than the Goblins, but like more popular than probably what Jimothy saw, the Dover Demon. That's a very similar looking creature.
I've heard the story, but I don't think I've ever looked it up. I'm going to look it up while you're.
Go ahead and pull up a picture of it.
Okay,
the drawing of it.
Yeah, it's kind of the same, like big bulbous looking head and like weird long fingers and everything. Yeah, that's it could be kind of the same thing.
Not exact, but very similar. And so, but I mean, if you look at humans, we're not all exact,
Exactly. It's like the difference between a turtle and a tortoise, it's still the same like genus, but a different other scientific classification that I don't know how to explain.
Or a Chihuahua and a German Shepherd. Like they're both dogs, right?
Even better.
Very different.
Which from the sounds of it, the Hopkinsville Goblins were definitely Chihuahuas.
They were the Chihuahuas of the cave dwelling creatures.
Yes.
They could be. Yeah, they were very tiny. It's like a possibility. Yeah, I don't know. You can take this in so many directions, and that's what I love about the story is that it is truly a rabbit hole that you could chase. I mean, forever. You could take it one step further. They're genetically incestuously bred duende. They're just little gnomes. They're the bad genes of the gnomes. Who knows?
Well, it is Kentucky, so I mean,
it's Kentucky. It's just what they do there.
Allegedly.
It's the Mexican aliens, those Mexican alien bodies that just came out. Well, they just come out recently. But
they're definitely real Mexican aliens.
Totally
yes.
real, yeah. It could be so many things, and like I said, that's why I love this story. It's got it all. It's got a shootout and creatures and Billy Ray, clown cars, yeah. The military, it's very exciting stuff. So I don't know. I find it interesting that you think it's something that lives here. I can't say that you're wrong because I don't know. I would like to think it's aliens, but I could be wrong. And I think that's kind of the question that we should be starting to wonder now. Did it happen? I think we're past that. Something happened.
Something definitely happened. Yeah.
Something happened. And I think it's beyond the norm. It's beyond owls. That's for sure. And in my opinion, I guess I can't say I wasn't there. I don't fucking know. I wasn't there. So anyway, do you have any closing thoughts about the Goblins or?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite stories. It's a great thought experiment of, trying to figure out, what could it have been? Was it aliens? Was it something that was already here? Why did I guess we know why they got termed little green men. That's the based on sci-fi writers and the media taking that and twisting it as they do, but what was it? What could it have been? That's the biggest question and takeaway on that, and we'll never know.
Will they come back? That's another question. Are they going to come back again?
Have they been coming back, and did they ever leave? There's so many questions.
My door is always open if they want to come here. Just saying, I won't be a weirdo. I'll let you in my house.
Yeah, I'm not going to shoot at you if you come here.
Yeah, we're good. So I'm just saying, if you guys need a place to stay, just let me know.
Yeah, open invite to all hopgobs.
All the hopgobs. Yeah, I think it's a fun story. I think folks should check it out. George Dudding actually probably wrote the most comprehensive book about it. I think it's called The Kelly-Hopkinsville Encounter or something along those lines. George has written a lot of books about a lot of things. He was actually witness to the Silver Bridge collapse, so he's an interesting fellow. If you've never heard of him, check him out. I promise I'm not plugging people every show. Well, I might. Fuck it. Why not? Let's spread the love, you guys. Get on Amazon, go buy George Dudding's book. Because like I said, nobody else has ever written to that extent about this story. So check that out. And with that being said, guys, we'll see you back here for the next episode.